Hey guys, welcome back! Today I'm taking you on a journey into the forgotten pages of medieval Europe, a story that's more dramatic than any fantasy movie you've ever watched. This is the untold legend of a girl who rose from ashes to challenge kings, rewrite destiny, and carve her name into history. So sit tight, because once you start listening, you won't be able to stop. In the rugged Highlands of Scotland, where the wind howled like the spirits of fallen warriors, and the mountains stood like ancient guardians, there once lived a girl who would change the fate of kingdoms. Her name was Eire MacLeod. Not a princess, not a noblewoman, just an ordinary girl born into extraordinary times. Eire grew up in the village of Dunrath, a small settlement surrounded by heather fields and deep pine forests. The villagers whispered that she was different from the moment she took her first breath. She had intense gray eyes, like storm clouds trapped in a child's gaze, and an instinct for survival far beyond her age. Her mother, Isla MacLeod, often said, "This girl carries the strength of the old gods." But even she couldn't imagine what destiny had planned. When Eire was just 10, tragedy struck. Dunrath was raided by a ruthless warband from the north, a group notorious for burning villages and enslaving survivors. The sky turned red with flames, cattle screamed, and the air filled with smoke and terror. Eire watched helplessly as her father was killed defending the village, and before she realized what was happening, her mother pushed her into the forest, whispering, "Run, my child, live, even if I don't." Those were the last words she ever heard from her mother. For days, Eire wandered the forest alone, cold, hungry, and terrified. But something unusual happened there. Instead of breaking, she hardened. Instead of crying, she listened to the wind, to the river, to the strange silence of the woods. She learned to track animals, survive storms, and navigate the land with uncanny precision. It was as if nature itself was teaching her, preparing her. Years passed, and Eire grew into a fierce young woman, strong, fast, and unbelievably observant. At 16, she returned to the ruins of Dunrath. Most would have collapsed in grief. Eire didn't. She made a silent vow over the ashes of her childhood. "I will rise, I will fight, and the world will remember my name." But destiny was already waiting. One cold morning, while hunting near the river Caerlion, Eire heard the desperate cries of a young man. Rushing toward the sound, she found a wounded boy lying near his fallen horse. He wore finely crafted armor, nothing like a common soldier. His cloak carried the crest of the Scottish royal family. This boy was Prince Rowan of Alba. Arrows were embedded in his shoulder, blood staining his tunic. Enemies had ambushed him while he traveled secretly through the Highlands. Eire had a choice: walk away or save him. She chose the latter, not because he was a prince, but because he was someone who needed her. She dragged him to a hollow beneath a fallen tree, stitched his wounds with plant fibers, and fed him water from a stream. When Rowan regained consciousness, the first thing he saw was Eire's storm-gray eyes watching him with quiet determination. Who are you?" he asked weakly. "A girl who doesn't let people die," she replied. For days, Eire hid Rowan from the mercenaries searching for him. She hunted for food, crafted makeshift weapons, and moved silently through the forest like a shadow. Rowan, despite his pain, couldn't help but admire her. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Fierce, yet calm, wild, yet wise. He asked her, "Why risk your life for me?" She answered, "Because someone once saved mine." Rowan soon revealed the truth. A war was coming. A powerful faction within the Scottish nobility was plotting a coup to overthrow his father, King Aldric. He had been traveling to secure alliances when he was attacked. If he failed to reach his destination, Scotland could plunge into chaos. Eire listened silently, her mind racing. A kingdom on the brink, a prince hunted, a rebellion rising.
and a girl with nothing left to lose. This was her moment. "Take me with you," she said. Rowan hesitated. "You don't understand. This mission is dangerous. You could die." Ira stepped closer, eyes burning like embers. "I've already died once. What's left is only purpose." And so began the unlikely alliance, a forest-born warrior girl and a prince burdened by the weight of his future. They traveled through stormy nights and fog-drenched mornings, crossing treacherous terrains. Ira taught Rowan how to move silently, how to read nature's signs, and how to stay alive without guards or privilege. In return, Rowan taught her about politics, the complexity of war, and the truth of the world she never knew.
But soon, rumors spread of a mysterious girl fighting alongside the prince. A girl ruthless enough to take down trained soldiers. A girl whose eyes glowed like the ancient spirits. Villagers began calling her the Iron Rose because she was both beautiful and deadly. Their journey took them to the fortress of Caerlion, where Rowan hoped to meet his most loyal ally, Lord Fergus. But the moment they arrived, something felt wrong. The guard towers were too quiet. The torches flickered in an unnatural way. And when the gates opened, it was a trap. Armed men rushed out, surrounding them. Ira pushed Rowan behind her, gripping her handmade spear. But she realized something instantly. These soldiers weren't mercenaries. They were elite warriors wearing the crest of the traitorous noble faction. A tall man with a cold smile stepped forward. "Prince Rowan, you should have stayed dead when we gave you the chance." Ira's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret saying that." The battle that followed was brutal. Ira fought like lightning, fast, unpredictable, unstoppable. She spun her spear, dodged swords, broke shields, and moved with instinctive precision. Even the elite soldiers struggled against her, but there were too many. Rowan tried to help, but he was still recovering. Just when it seemed they would be overwhelmed, Ira noticed a weakness, a narrow passage by the stable where only one man could pass at a time. "Rowan, run!" she shouted. "No, I won't leave you! You must, or Scotland falls!" Her voice carried such authority that Rowan obeyed. Ira held the passage alone, fighting off attacker after attacker, her arms burning, her breath ragged. Blood splattered the stone walls, steel clashed against steel, and her eyes burned with relentless fury. At last, Rowan escaped through the back exit, but Ira was captured. Bound in chains, bruised and bleeding, she was taken before the traitorous lord leading the coup, Lord Cedric Blackthorn, a man feared for his cruelty and ambition. Blackthorn studied her with cruel curiosity. "You," he said slowly, "are the girl they call the Iron Rose. Impressive for a nobody." Ira held his gaze without fear. "If you think chains can break me, you know nothing about strength." Blackthorn smiled darkly. "Oh, strength! Let's see how long yours lasts once I use you to lure the prince back." Ira's eyes narrowed. "Rowan will come, but not to save himself. He'll come to end you." Blackthorn laughed. "We will see." And thus began the next chapter of her destiny. A destiny that would shake the foundations of kings.
Chains rattled softly as Ira MacLeod was dragged through the dim stone corridors of Blackthorn Keep. Torches flickered along the walls, casting jagged shadows that danced like restless spirits. The soldiers pushed her forward, but she didn't stumble. Even with bruises on her face, cuts on her arms, and dried blood coating her hands, Ira walked as though nothing could bend her spirit. Lord Cedric Blackthorn watched her approach with a smirk. He sat upon a massive wooden chair carved with wolves and thorns, symbols of his ruthless power. His cold blue eyes were fixed on Ira as if she were a rare beast captured in the wild. "So," he said slowly, "this is the girl who caused my elite soldiers so much trouble." Ira met his eyes without blinking. "You should train them better." A ripple of amusement passed through the hall, followed by tension. Blackthorn rose from his chair, circling her like a predator examining its prey. "You have fire," he murmured, "but fire can be extinguished." Ira held up her chin. "Not the kind I carry." Blackthorn's smile faded. "You will serve me, Iron Rose, whether by choice or by force." Ira's expression stayed calm, but her mind raced. She knew his plan. He wanted to use her as bait to break Rowan's spirit, drag him out of hiding, and finish the coup once and for all. But Ira also knew Rowan. He wasn't reckless, he wasn't foolish, and he wasn't coming alone. For now, she needed to survive and buy time. Blackthorn ordered the guards, "Throw her into the lower dungeon. Make sure she remains alive. We'll need her." As the guards marched her away, Ira whispered silently to herself, "Hold on, Rowan. Make your move when the time is right." The dungeon was a cold maze of dripping stone and rusted iron. The air smelled of damp earth, old blood, and hopelessness. They chained Ira to the wall, her wrists bound tightly above her head. After the guards left, silence swallowed the darkness. But Ira did not break. She slowed her breathing, conserving strength. She tested the chains, thick, heavy, but old. She ran her fingers across the stone, uneven, possibly weakened by moisture. If she had enough time, she could escape. Hours passed, maybe a day. She didn't know, there was no sunlight to measure time, but she felt movement in the air. Someone else was there.
A whisper came from the cell next to hers. Are you Ira MacLeod? The Iron Rose?" Ira stiffened. "Who's asking?" "My name is Maylin," the voice replied, weak and trembling. "I was taken by Blackthorn's men weeks ago. The stories, they said a girl was fighting beside the prince. They said you were unstoppable." Ira let out a slow breath. "Unstoppable is a myth, but determined, that's real." Malin's voice softened. "The guards fear you, you know? They say you killed 10 men before they captured you." Ira didn't answer. Not because she wanted to hide the truth, but because she knew numbers didn't matter. What mattered was the fight still ahead. Suddenly, footsteps echoed through the dungeon. A guard approached, holding a torch. "Blackthorn wants the girl," he barked. Ira braced herself as they unchained her and dragged her upstairs. She was taken to the war chamber, where Blackthorn and his council stood over a large map of Scotland. Blackthorn pointed at the map. "Rowan is heading toward the western clans. He's seeking allies, and you will help me stop him." Ira smiled faintly. "You're smarter than I thought. You know he won't abandon me." Blackthorn's eyes narrowed. "He'll walk straight into a trap." Ira lifting a chin. "Or he'll burn this keep to the ground." The council members muttered nervously, but Blackthorn simply motioned to his men. "Prepare the signal fires. Send riders. The prince will be found." As they pulled Ira away, she whispered to herself, "Rowan, don't come alone. Bring an army." Meanwhile, miles away, Rowan wasn't resting. After escaping Caerlion, he had ridden through the night, across steep hills and icy forests until he reached the stronghold of Clan McInroy, one of the few remaining clans loyal to the crown. Lord Fergus McInroy, an old warrior with silver hair and sharp eyes, listened carefully as Rowan told him everything: the ambush, the betrayal, and Eira's capture. When Rowan finished, Fergus leaned back and sighed deeply. "Blackthorn has grown too bold. This coup is no longer a threat. It is a wildfire." Rowan clenched his fists. "I'm going back for her. I won't leave her in his hands." Fergus studied him. "This girl? She means something to you?" Rowan hesitated. "She saved my life, and she's the only reason I'm standing here right now. If I let her die, I don't deserve the crown." The old lord nodded slowly. "Then you won't go alone."
Within hours, warriors from Clan McInroy assembled, strong, battle-hardened men and women loyal to Fergus. The sound of clashing steel and marching boots thundered across the courtyard as Rowan prepared for war. He stared at the horizon and whispered, "Hold on, Eira, I'm coming." Back in Blackthorn Keep, Eira was returned to her dungeon, but this time something was different. The guard who brought her in kept glancing nervously over his shoulder. Before leaving, he leaned closer and whispered, "Help is coming." Eira's heart tightened. Rowan was near. The moment the guard left, Eira began working on her escape. She scraped the chain against the stone, testing its weak point. She pulled with every ounce of strength she had left. Her wrists bled, her muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. Because Eira MacLeod had survived worse. Finally, crack! The old iron bolt snapped. Eira dropped to the floor, panting but free. She moved quickly through the shadows, avoiding guard patrols and memorizing the hallways. She needed weapons, she needed an exit, and she needed to prepare for Rowan's arrival, because she knew Blackthorn would be waiting. After searching several storage rooms, she found a rack of weapons, spears, daggers, and longbows. She grabbed what she could carry and slipped through a narrow archway leading to the upper floors. Suddenly, a hand clamped over her mouth. Eira spun, ready to kill, but stopped. It was Maylin, the girl from the cell. Her face was pale, her body thin from starvation, but her eyes were filled with determination. "Take me with you," Maylin whispered. "I won't survive if I stay." Eira studied her for a moment, then nodded. "No one deserves to rot in here. Stay close." Together, they moved through the keep, avoiding guards, ducking behind pillars and slipping through hidden passages. But then, a horn blasted outside, loud, fierce, echoing across the valley. Eira froze. She knew that sound. Rowan was here. Outside the keep, Rowan and the warriors of Clan McInroy stormed the battlefield. Swords clashed, arrows flew, and the night sky blazed with fire. Rowan fought like a man possessed, every strike fueled by the thought of Eira trapped behind those stone walls. Inside, Blackthorn roared orders at his men. "Hold the gates, kill anyone who enters." But he knew the tide was turning. Eira and Maylin reached a balcony overlooking the chaos. Warriors clashed, torches burned, and the earth shook beneath the battle cries. Maylin gasped, "They're fighting for you!" Eira's eyes hardened. No, they're fighting for Scotland. Suddenly, a familiar voice shouted from below, "Eira!" Rowan. He was alive, fighting, calling her name. Eira didn't hesitate. She raised her spear, her voice cutting through the battlefield like thunder. "Eira, I'm here!" As their eyes met across the flames, the world seemed to stop for a heartbeat. Then everything exploded into action. "Come on," Eira shouted to Maylin. "We end this now." As Rowan battled from the outside and Eira charged from within, Blackthorn's fate was sealed.
And thus began the final confrontation, a storm that would shape the destiny of the Highlands.
The night sky above Blackthorn Keep glowed with fire and smoke as the battle raged on. From the balcony where Eire stood, she could see the warriors of Clan McInroy clashing with Blackthorn's soldiers. Steel met steel, shields splintered, and the cries of battle echoed through the valley. The fortress was trembling under the weight of war. But Eire wasn't watching the battle. She was watching Rowan. There he stood at the gates, sword flashing like lightning, shouting orders, rallying his fighters with fierce determination. Every strike he delivered brought him closer to her. Every breath he took carried her name. Maelin clutched Eire's arm. "What do we do now?" Eire's eyes narrowed with resolve. "We finish this from the inside. Blackthorn won't expect an attack from his own halls." With that, she lifted her spear and sprinted down the stairway, Maelin right behind her. Every corridor seemed alive with tension, guards rushing, alarms echoing through the walls. But Eire moved like a shadow, swift and silent. As they reached the central hall, the heavy doors burst open, and Blackthorn himself stormed inside, his elite guards surrounding him. His armor gleamed black like a raven's wing, and his sword carried the blood of many battles. He froze when he saw her. "So, the Iron Rose escaped her cage." Eire stepped forward, spear in hand. "And now I'm here to tear down your throne." Blackthorn laughed, not a mocking laugh, but a deep, dangerous one. "You think you can defeat me, a girl raised in the dirt, a wild creature playing at heroism." Eire's grip tightened. "I don't need titles. Strength is enough." Blackthorn's eyes glittered with cold fury. "Then show me." He charged. Eire pushed Maelin aside just as Blackthorn's blade crashed against her spear. Sparks exploded, the impact shaking her bones. She staggered back but didn't fall. Blackthorn swung again, a brutal arc meant to kill in one blow. Eire ducked, rolled, and thrust her spear toward his leg, but he blocked her effortlessly. "You fight well," Blackthorn growled, "but you're no match for me." Eire didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her breathing steadied, her senses sharpened. She remembered the forest, the wolves, the wind. She remembered survival. And she remembered her vow. Blackthorn attacked relentlessly, each strike heavier than the last. But Eire adapted, step by step, breath by breath, finding the rhythm of his attacks. She moved faster, lighter, anticipating his movements before he made them. Still, he was strong, stronger than any opponent she had ever faced. A powerful blow sent her crashing into a pillar. Pain shot through her ribs. Maelin cried out, "Eire!" But Eire lifted one hand, signaling her not to interfere. Blackthorn advanced, sword raised. "This ends now." Eire looked up at him and smiled. "Not yet." With a burst of strength, she lunged forward, spinning her spear in a sweeping arc. The blade grazed Blackthorn's cheek, drawing blood. He roared in rage and swung at her again, but she dodged, striking his armor, forcing him back. The sound of battle from outside grew louder. Rowan and his warriors were breaching the gates. Blackthorn looked toward the entrance, realizing time was slipping through his fingers. Eire saw the hesitation and attacked. She drove her spear forward, aiming for the gap in his armor. But Blackthorn twisted at the last moment and struck her across the shoulder with the hilt of his sword. She collapsed to one knee, breathless. Blackthorn raised his blade for the final blow. "Goodbye, little rose." But before he could strike, a whistle cut through the air. An arrow thundered down from the upper balcony, slamming into Blackthorn's gauntlet and knocking his sword aside. Blackthorn snarled and looked up. Standing there, bow in hand, was Rowan.
He was bruised, exhausted, armor cracked, but alive, determined, and furious. "Get away from her!" he shouted. Blackthorn's smile returned, crueler than before. "So the prince joins the fight. Good. I've been waiting." Rowan leaped from the balcony, landing hard beside Ira. He offered her a hand. She took it, pulling herself up. "You always show up late," she said breathlessly. Rowan smirked. "You always start the party without me." Blackthorn growled. "Enough. If both of you want to die, I'll oblige." The three of them stood in a perfect triangle. The Iron Rose, the Prince of Alba, and the traitor lord. The torches flickered, the floor trembled, and the distant battle vibrated through the stone. This wasn't just a fight. It was the moment Scotland's future would be decided. Blackthorn charged first, aiming for Rowan. Rowan blocked the attack, but Blackthorn's strength was overwhelming. The two clashed like storms colliding, each strike echoing like thunder. Eira circled around, looking for an opening. She lunged at Blackthorn's side, but he turned, catching her spear with his gauntlet and shoving her backward. "2 against 1, he snarled. "Then I'll break you both." The fight intensified. Blackthorn swung at Rowan. Rowan blocked. Eira struck from behind. Blackthorn dodged. Rowan slashed upward. Blackthorn parried. Eira jabbed at his leg. He kicked her away. For every attack they launched, Blackthorn had a counter. But something was changing. He was slowing. Rowan's teamwork with Eira was beginning to overwhelm him. Their movements, once chaotic, became synchronized. Rowan would defend while Eira attacked. Eira would distract while Rowan struck. It was as if the forest girl and the royal prince were two halves of one warrior. Finally, Eira landed a clean hit, her spear slicing across Blackthorn's shoulder. He roared in pain. Rowan seized the moment, slashing across Blackthorn's chest. The traitor stumbled back, bleeding, furious. "This is not the end," Blackthorn gasped. He lunged with desperate fury, aiming to kill Rowan. But Eira moved first, faster than she had ever moved before. She grabbed her spear, spun around him, and drove the blade straight into Blackthorn's back. The traitor froze. His sword slipped from his hand, and he collapsed to the floor. The hall fell silent. Eira stood over him, chest rising and falling, sweat dripping down her face. Rowan approached slowly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he whispered. But Eira didn't speak. She was staring at Blackthorn, not with hatred, but with the weight of everything she had endured. The fire of revenge inside her finally faded. Maylin entered the hall, trembling but relieved. You did it." Rowan turned to her. "No, she did it. Scotland is free because of her." Eira shook her head. "No, Scotland is free because we fought together." Outside, the fortress gates burst open as Rowan's allies stormed inside, cheering in victory. The traitorous banners were torn down, and the crest of Alba rose proudly once again. Eira looked at Rowan as the flames of battle dimmed behind them. "You found me," she said softly. Rowan smiled. "I would cross every mountain in Scotland to find you." And for the first time since her village burned years ago, Eira allowed herself to breathe. She wasn't alone anymore. This chapter was over, but her destiny had only just begun. The fires of battle still smoldered across the hills when dawn finally broke. A faint golden glow swept across the Highlands, painting the valley with light, as though the land itself had survived a nightmare and was now waking to a long-awaited morning. Ira stepped onto the battlements of Blackthorn Keep, breathing in the cold, crisp air. Smoke hung in the sky, carrying the scent of ash and steel, but beneath it she could sense freedom, something Scotland had not tasted since Blackthorn began his silent, dark uprising. Below her, the warriors of Clan McInroy tended to the wounded, gathered weapons, and raised the banners of Alba. The fortress, once a symbol of fear, was now reclaimed. For the first time in years, the Highlands felt alive. Rowan appeared beside her, brushing dust from his cloak, his face weary but bright. "You should be resting," he said gently. Ira shook her head. "I've spent too much time in cages. The fresh air feels like victory." Rowan leaned on the stone railing, eyes following the sunrise. Blackthorn is gone. His forces are scattered. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. Ira studied him for a moment. His armor was cracked, his cheek bruised, his knuckles bloodied. Yet there was something different in him, something stronger. He was no longer the sheltered prince running from death. He was a leader, born through fire. "What happens now?" she asked. Rowan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he sighed, the weight of his future settling onto his shoulders. "I must return to Dunvarn. The council has to be reformed. The clans must be united. The kingdom needs stability." Ira nodded slowly. "And you want me to come with you?" Rowan turned to her, searching her face. "I want you to come because you're the bravest person I've ever known. Scotland needs you. He hesitated. "I need you." Ira looked away, her heart tightening. "Rowan, I didn't fight for thrones or crowns. I fought because it was right, because Blackthorn destroyed my village, because I wasn't going to let him do the same to others." Rowan stepped closer. "And that is exactly why you belong at my side." She shook her head. "I don't belong in castles. I belong in the wilds, in forests, in the wind, with freedom under my feet. I don't know how to stand in royal halls and smile at nobles." Rowan smiled softly. "Then we'll teach them to stand in yours." Ira laughed, the first true laugh she'd let escape in a long time. But even as she laughed, she felt something deeper pulling at her, a worry, a voice whispering that her path wasn't meant to end here, not yet. Before she could speak again, Malin approached them, her steps hesitant but determined. Her face had regained color after food and rest, and a spark of strength glowed in her once fearful eyes. "Eira," she said softly, "there's something you need to see." Eira frowned. "What is it?" Malin handed her a small leather pouch, worn and dusty. "They found this on Blackthorn's table. It's sealed with a crest, not his." Eira opened the pouch carefully. Inside was a folded parchment with a wax seal bearing a symbol she did not recognize, a phoenix burning in dark flame. Beneath it were strange markings, like coded messages. Rowan's expression changed instantly. "That's not a Highland symbol. That's foreign." Eira unfolded the parchment. A chill ran through her veins. The message was short but powerful. "The first strike is done. Proceed to phase 2. The girl is the key. S." Eira's pulse quickened. "The girl? Me?" Rowan nodded slowly, jaw tightening. Blackthorn wasn't acting alone. Someone else was behind this, someone bigger. Malin looked terrified. "What does that mean? Another war?" Eira reread the message, her stomach twisting. No, this wasn't just a coup. This was the beginning of something larger. Rowan clenched his fist. And they wanted you. Eira felt something old and familiar, fear, but it didn't weaken her. It sharpened her. Then I can't go to Dunvarn. I can't walk into the heart of the kingdom if I'm being hunted. Rowan reached for her arm. You won't be hunted if you stay with me. Eira shook her head. Rowan, someone out there thinks I'm important, someone dangerous. If I walk beside you, I put your kingdom at risk. I put everyone at risk. Rowan's voice cracked slightly. So, you're leaving? Eira swallowed hard. I don't know where this message leads, but I know this. I have to find the truth. I need to know who S is. I need to understand why they're after me. Rowan took a step closer. I don't want you to go.
Eira looked up at him, her eyes fierce but warm. And I don't want to leave either, but running from this won't stop it. If someone marked me, they'll come again, stronger. Rowan exhaled slowly. Then I'll go with you. Eira smiled sadly and placed a hand on his chest. You can't. Scotland needs you. You're the prince, the last hope the kingdom has. You have a throne waiting, a future, a destiny. Rowan held her hand tightly. And what about your destiny? Eira looked toward the horizon, where the mountains rose like silent guardians. My destiny isn't in a castle. It's out there, somewhere in the unknown. I've been running from my past for years. Maybe it's time to run toward my destiny instead. Rowan closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. Maylin whispered, Eira, are you sure? Eira nodded slowly. I survived the orphan fires. I survived Blackthorn. I survived chains, blood, and betrayal. And every time, something inside me pushed me forward, something I still don't understand. She held up the parchment. This message, maybe it's the answer. Rowan stepped back, breathing deeply, controlling the storm inside him. If you must go, then go with my blessing. But promise me one thing. Eira looked at him. Promise me you'll come back. Eira's voice was steady, though her heart trembled. I promise. Rowan reached into his cloak and pulled out a dagger with a carved stag on the hilt. This belonged to my father, a symbol of the royal bloodline. If you ever need me, send this, and I will come. Eira took the dagger gently, holding it like something precious. Thank you. Rowan shook his head softly. No, Eira, thank you for saving Scotland, for saving me. A silence settled between them, a silence filled with unspoken meaning, unspoken hopes, unspoken fear. Then Rowan leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. May the mountains guard you. May the winds guide you. And with that, their paths for now parted. Eira turned away, her cloak sweeping behind her, Maylin beside her. Together they stepped through the ruined gates of Blackthorn Keep and into the open Highlands. The wind tugged at Eira's hair. The sun warmed her bruised skin. The world ahead was uncertain, dark and filled with danger. But for the first time, she walked toward it willingly, not as a survivor, not as a warrior, but as the Iron Rose, destined for something far greater than she had ever imagined.
The Chronicles of Elowen, the girl who defied kingdoms.
As the sun dipped behind the rolling Scottish Highlands, painting the sky in strokes of gold and copper, Elowen finally reached the borders of Caerlion, the kingdom whispered about in every medieval tavern, feared in every distant land, and respected by even the strongest monarchs. She stood before its colossal walls, carved with ancient symbols that seemed to pulse with stories of warriors who once lived, fought, and perished defending the realm. Elowen took a slow breath. This was the place her mother spoke of in her dying moments. This was where the truth waited. When the massive iron gates creaked open, the sound echoed like thunder between the stone cliffs. A line of armored guards emerged, each carrying long spears reflecting the last rays of daylight. Their leader, Sir Duncan, stepped forward. He was tall, almost towering, with a face that looked like carved out of stone and eyes sharp as blades. "State your name and purpose," he demanded. Elowen, though exhausted, lifted her chin. "My name is Elowen Heartwood. I come seeking the counsel of Caerlion. I bring knowledge of an impending war." Murmurs rose among the soldiers. A girl, bringing warnings of war? It sounded absurd, but Sir Duncan narrowed his eyes. Something in her voice, something in the steadiness of her gaze, made him pause. "Follow me," he ordered. Inside the kingdom walls, Elowen's breath caught. Massive towers spiraled upward. Marketplaces bustled with craftsmen. Knights trained in courtyards, their swords clashing like rolling thunder. Banners rippled in the wind, each marked with a silver hawk, the symbol of Caerlion. Duncan led her to the great keep, where the king's council awaited. The doors swung open, revealing a vast chamber illuminated by hundreds of torches. At its center sat the royal council, a semicircle of nobles draped in velvet, their faces stern and unreadable. And on the highest seat sat King Aldric. His hair was gray, but his posture strong. His deep-set eyes observed Elowen with curiosity rather than judgment. "Speak," the king said. "You claim knowledge of war." Elowen swallowed, steadying her voice. "The northern clans have united under a warlord called Magnus the Red. He has forged alliances with raiders from the coast. They plan to invade the valley in 3 moons' time, and they want Caerlion." A heavy silence fell. Some council members scoffed. Others leaned forward, intrigued. King Aldric said nothing, studying her as though weighing her very soul. Finally, he spoke. "How does a young woman from the Highlands know the plans of Magnus?"
Elowen clenched her fists. "My mother was once part of Magnus's court. She fled when she discovered his plans to take the kingdoms by blood. She died trying to protect me. Her final words were a warning. Caerlion will be the first to fall." Shock rippled across the room. King Aldric leaned back slowly. "Your mother. What was her name?" "Ilara." At the name, the king froze. Gasps rose among the council. "Ilara of the Crimson Veil?" whispered Lord Fergus. Aldric's jaw tightened. His eyes went distant, as though remembering a ghost from another life. "Ilara was the most gifted strategist of her generation. She disappeared 18 years ago after refusing to support Magnus's rise. And now her daughter stands before us?" "Yes." The hall exploded into debate. "She could be lying. She may be a spy. Or she may be the only warning we get." King Aldrich lifted a hand, and silence returned. He turned to Elowen. "If what you say is true, then Caerlion is facing annihilation. Magnus commands thousands. His warriors are relentless. He leaves no survivors." Elowen's voice trembled, but she did not falter. "That is why I came. I cannot let my mother's warning die with her." The king studied her. Then slowly he stood. "You carry your mother's bravery and her fire." His next words echoed through the chamber. "From this moment onward, you will remain under the protection of Caerlion, and you will advise us in preparing for war." The council erupted again, half in protest, half in awe. Sir Duncan stepped forward. "My king, if I may, I will take responsibility for her safety." Aldrich nodded. "See to it." As Elowen bowed, she felt the weight of destiny settle on her shoulders. She had done it. She had found a kingdom willing to listen. But the real battle was yet to begin. Training begins. The following morning, Elowen was brought to the training grounds, where soldiers practiced swordplay, archery, and horseback combat. Duncan watched her closely. "You claim you want to help us, but war is not just strategy, it is survival." He tossed her a wooden practice sword. "Show me what you can do." Elowen grabbed the sword awkwardly. Truth was, she had never held one before. Duncan attacked first, quick and precise. His blow aimed for her shoulder. Elowen dodged purely by instinct, rolling across the dirt. Soldiers laughed, but Duncan didn't. Again he struck. This time she blocked, though the impact vibrated through her bones. "You're untrained, but you're not weak." Hours passed. Her hands blistered. Sweat soaked her hair, but she did not quit. Every time she fell, she pushed herself back up. By dusk, Duncan finally lowered his blade. "That's enough for today." Elowen swayed with exhaustion. Duncan handed her a flask of water. "You surprise me," he admitted. "Most nobles quit after a few swings. But you fight like someone with something to prove." Elowen met his eyes. "I do." The Library of Shadows. That night, Duncan guided her to a hidden chamber beneath the castle, a place whispered about as the Library of Shadows. Its stone walls were lined with dusty scrolls and relics no longer spoken of in the kingdom. "These contain every historical record of Magnus," Duncan said. "If he is really coming, the answers will be here." Elowen lit a candle and began studying the scrolls. One scroll detailed Magnus's early life. Another described his war tactics, ambushes, night attacks, psychological warfare. Then she found it. A torn parchment showing a symbol she recognized from her childhood. A red serpent coiled around a sword. Her blood ran cold. "This," she whispered, "this was painted on the walls of our home when my mother fled." Duncan frowned. "It's the mark of Magnus's elite warriors, the blood serpents." Elowen felt a chill. If the blood serpents are coming, then Magnus isn't invading just to conquer. Duncan swallowed. "What then?" Elowen looked at the symbol, her voice hardly above a whisper. "He's coming to find me." The King's Revelation. The next day, King Aldrich summoned Elowen privately. The great hall was empty, save for him and the fire crackling behind his throne. "Elowen," he said gravely, "I must tell you something about your mother, something I believe she never had the chance to tell you." Her heart pounded. Aldrich stepped closer. Elara was not merely a strategist. She was the rightful heir to the northern dominion, a kingdom Magnus stole by force. She was a queen? Aldrich nodded slowly. And that makes you the last surviving heir. Elowen staggered. Her mother, a queen. Her lineage, royal. Magnus's invasion, not about Caerlion. Duncan's words echoed. He's coming to find me. King Aldrich placed a firm hand on her shoulder. You are in greater danger than you realize, but Caerlion will protect you. As long as I live, I swear it. Elowen lifted her eyes, resolve burning in them. Then we must be ready, because Magnus will burn every kingdom between here and the Highlands to reach me. Aldrich nodded. And that, he said, is why you must lead us. The call of destiny. From that moment, everything changed. Elowen was no longer just a girl with a warning. She was a royal heir, a key to Magnus's conquest, and the one person who could unite kingdoms against him. Every day she trained alongside Duncan. Every night she studied battle scrolls in the Library of Shadows. The soldiers began to respect her. People whispered her name with hope. Even the council, once skeptical, now listened to her strategies. But as the days passed, dark clouds gathered over the northern horizon. Scouts returned with grim news. Villages burned, outposts abandoned, entire forests cut down to build siege engines. Magnus's army was moving, and they were closer than anyone feared.
The winds over Caerlion began to change. They carried with them the scent of burning pine, the echo of marching footsteps, and the distant tremble of war drums. Every morning the sky seemed a shade darker, as though the world itself sensed the storm that was marching toward the kingdom. And at the center of it all stood Elowen, young, determined, royal by blood, yet unclaimed by any throne. The weight of destiny rested on her shoulders, but she refused to bend. One dawn, as the first light crept into her chamber, a sudden knock jolted her awake. Sir Duncan's voice followed, tense and urgent. "Elowen, come quickly. The scouts have returned. There is news you must hear." Elowen threw on her cloak and followed Duncan through twisting stone corridors toward the war room. The atmosphere was thick with worry. Guards paced anxiously. Servants whispered in corners. Even the torches burned lower, their flames flickering nervously. Inside the war room, King Aldrich stood over a massive table covered with maps. His officers surrounded him, their expressions grim. When they saw Elowen enter, they made way for her. Aldrich looked up, his eyes weary but resolute. "Elowen, what we feared has begun." A scout stepped forward, covered in dust and dried mud, as though he had sprinted across half the kingdom to deliver the message. "My lord," he said, bowing, "Magnus's forces have crossed the Iron Pass." A gasp rippled around the room. "That means they are less than 2 weeks away," Duncan said quietly. The scout shook his head. "No, sir. They are moving faster. They've built war wagons, massive iron-covered beasts pulled by northern oxen. They can cross mountains in half the usual time. At their current pace, they will reach the valley within 7 days." Elowen's heart hammered. 7 days. 7 days until the war that would decide the fate of kingdoms. King Aldrich's jaw tightened. "Prepare the defenses. Call every knight, every archer, every battalion. No one rests until Caerlion stands ready." The room erupted into movement, but Elowen remained still, staring at the map. Magnus's path cut straight through the valley, then to the castle's north walls. The blood serpents, his most merciless warriors, would lead the assault. She knew them. She had seen them as a child. They were not an army.
They were a force of nature, silent, deadly, unstoppable. Duncan noticed her silence. "Elowen, what are you thinking?" She didn't look up. "I know he's coming for me. He'll tear down every wall if that's what it takes." King Aldrich walked closer. "Then we must ensure he never reaches you." Elowen finally turned, her eyes burning with resolve. "No, hiding won't stop him, running won't stop him. The only way this ends is if I face him." The king's expression darkened. Duncan looked horrified. "Elowen, absolutely not," Duncan stepped forward. "Magnus is a monster. You're not trained enough to face him. You're still learning. You cannot—" But Elowen lifted her hand, stopping him. "Duncan, I know who I am now. I am the last heir of the Northern Dominion. This is my fight as much as it is Caerlion's." The room fell silent. Finally, King Aldrich spoke. "You will not face him alone, but you are right. Magnus will not stop. Whether we fight or flee, he will chase us until either he claims you or we destroy him."
Elowen nodded. "Then we destroy him." The training of a queen. The next days rushed past like a storm. Caerlion transformed from a peaceful kingdom into a fortress preparing for war. Blacksmiths hammered day and night, forging swords and reinforcing armor. Archers practiced from dawn until dusk. Walls were fortified, gates reinforced, trenches dug around the outer fields. But none trained harder than Elowen. Sir Duncan took personal charge of her preparation. Each morning began with sword drills until her arms shook. Afternoons were spent riding through the fields, learning to lead from horseback. Nights were devoted to strategy, studying ancient battles in military formations under the flicker of candlelight. At first, she struggled. Her hands blistered, her legs ached, her head swam with exhaustion, but she never stopped. Every fall only made her rise faster. Every mistake only sharpened her judgment. Gradually, she adapted, her movements swifter, her reactions quicker. Duncan watched her with a mixture of pride and disbelief. One evening, after an intense sparring session, Duncan lowered his sword. "You've changed," he said softly. Elowen wiped sweat from her brow. "Into what?" His gaze lingered on her, steady, determined, unbreakable. "Into someone the world will remember." She felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she turned away, focusing on the horizon where dark clouds gathered. "Remember me or not, I just want to protect them." Duncan stepped beside her. "And you will." The mystic's prophecy. That night, as Elowen walked toward the great keep, an old woman stepped into her path, bent, wrapped in ragged wool, her eyes unnaturally bright. "Child," the woman said in a cracked voice, "the winds whisper your name." Elowen paused. "You're a mystic?" The woman nodded slowly. "I have seen the threads of fate. Yours burns bright, but fire attracts darkness." Elowen's heart tensed. "What did you see?" The mystic took her trembling hand. "You stand at the heart of a storm. Magnus seeks you not only for vengeance, but for power. Your blood, royal blood, carries the seal of the old northern kings. Whoever possesses it gains the right to rule the dominion." Elowen's stomach tightened. "So he needs me alive?" The mystic nodded. "Yes, alive, but not whole. He will attempt to bend you to his will." A chill ran through Elowen. "Tell me how to stop him." The mystic looked up at the sky. "You cannot stop the storm alone, but if you stand with those who believe in you, destiny may yet be rewritten."
Elowen opened her mouth to ask more, but the mystic vanished into the shadows, leaving only the echo of her words behind. The Council of Allies. The next morning, Elowen presented her idea to King Aldrich. If Magnus commands thousands, Caerlion alone cannot withstand him. We must call upon other kingdoms. Aldrich considered this heavily. If the Highland clans despise Magnus, the river tribes fear his fury. The merchants of the Eastern Road know war will ruin them. If we unite them, we may have a chance. Aldrich nodded slowly. You speak like a queen. He ordered riders to deliver messages across the lands. Days later, representatives arrived, fierce Highland warriors, river tribe archers, Eastern diplomats with hardened mercenaries. Elowen addressed them in the Great Hall. Magnus does not come to conquer a single kingdom. He comes to enslave us all. But if we stand together, we can crush him before his shadow darkens our homes. Her voice rang through the hall like steel. One by one, the leaders stood and pledged their warriors to her cause. For the first time in centuries, the lands united under a single banner. The banner of Caerlion. The banner of a young heir named Elowen. The shadow before the war. As the united armies settled around the valley, scouts delivered chilling news. Magnus's vanguard had reached the foothills. That night, silence fell over Caerlion. Torches burned low. Horses stamped nervously. Soldiers whispered prayers. The air trembled with tension. In her chamber, Elowen stared out at the moonlit fields. Tomorrow, the world would change. Kingdoms would fall or rise. Blood would cover the soil, and her fate, her very destiny, would be tested. A soft knock sounded. Duncan entered, holding a cloak lined with silver. He said, "It was your mother's." Elowen ran her fingers over the fabric. It felt like touching a memory she had almost forgotten. He said, "She would be proud of you." Elowen's voice trembled. "I hope so." Duncan stepped closer. "You are no longer that frightened girl who arrived at Caerlion's gates. Tomorrow, you will stand as a leader." She met his gaze, steady, loyal, unwavering. She said, "Then stand with me." He nodded, "Always." Dawn of the final march. As morning broke, the horns of Caerlion sounded across the valley. Thousands of warriors lined the fields. Banners snapped in the wind. Horses pawed the earth, sensing the coming carnage. Elowen rode to the front of the united army, clad in her mother's silver-lined cloak, sword at her side, courage burning in her eyes. Duncan rode beside her. King Aldrich stood just behind, and far in the distance, like a dark wave rolling over the horizon, Magnus's army appeared. War drums thundered. The ground shook. The sky darkened. Elowen lifted her sword. "For Caerlion! For the North! For freedom!" The army roared in answer, their voices echoing across the valley. Thus began the greatest battle the medieval world would ever witness. The horn of Caerlion blew once, low, deep, and trembling like the sound of the earth waking. A second horn followed, sharper, filled with urgency. Then came the final horn, long and piercing, echoing across the valley like a prophecy fulfilled. Elowen's fingers tightened around her sword. She could feel her heartbeat, not in her chest, but in her throat, her ears, her very bones. The ground beneath her horse vibrated as the armies of Magnus thundered into view, their numbers blackening the horizon. The sun rose behind them, turning their armor into silhouettes of death marching beneath a burning sky. Beside her, Sir Duncan adjusted his grip on his spear. "This is it," he whispered, though his voice was steady. "Every story we've lived has led to this moment." Elowen inhaled slowly. The cold morning air filled her lungs, sharpening her senses. "No," she replied softly. "This moment begins our story." The wind whipped across the valley, carrying with it the clatter of metal, the thump of war drums, and the eerie chanting of Magnus's blood serpents. Their voices rose and fell like the hiss of snakes, sending shivers through every soldier on Caerlion's side. King Aldric rode forward, raising his banner high. "For Caerlion, for the united clans, stand firm!" A thunderous cheer burst from the allied forces, Highlanders gripping massive claymores, river archers with eagle feather arrows, eastern mercenaries wielding curved blades. Thousands stood together, a wall of defiance against the darkness sweeping toward them. Elowen rode to the front, her silver-lined cloak billowing behind her. Every eye turned to her, some filled with hope, some with fear, but all waiting for her command. She lifted her sword. The valley fell silent. "For freedom," she said, her voice steady, quiet at first, but carrying with surprising force. "For every home Magnus burned, for every life he destroyed, for every future he tried to take." Her eyes narrowed, the fire in them unbreakable. "And for the bloodline he fears." The sword glimmered as the first beam of sunlight struck its edge. "Today," she said, "we end him." A roar shook the valley as Caerlion's forces surged behind her. The first clash. Magnus's vanguard hit first, a wave of armored riders crashing against Caerlion's shields. Steel rang against steel, horses screamed, arrows sliced through the air. The valley erupted into chaos. Elowen charged into the fray. Her blade met the first enemy soldier with a shock that shot up her arm. She turned, parried, dodged, struck. Every lesson Duncan had ever taught her, unfolding in a blur of instinct and precision. Her cloak streaked behind her like a silver flame, drawing friend and enemy eyes alike. Duncan fought beside her, his spear flashing like lightning as he cut down any who came near. "Stay close," he shouted. But war does not allow closeness for long. A massive war wagon, one of Magnus's iron beasts, crashed through the front line, scattering soldiers like leaves. It hurtled straight toward Elowen. "Elowen, move!" Duncan cried. She kicked her horse sharply. The beast leapt just as the wagon thundered past, splintering a tree. The shockwave nearly knocked her from the saddle. A soldier lunged at her. She twisted, slicing his arm, then brought her sword down in a single, clean arc. Another came. She deflected his strike, slammed her hilt into his jaw, and sent him crashing backward. The battlefield became a storm of metal, dust, screams, and fire, swirling together until the world shrank into nothing but instinct and survival.
The falling sky. Above the battlefield, dark shapes appeared. Magnus's fire slingers. They launched jars filled with burning pitch, and the sky rained fire. One jar exploded near Elowen, flames bursting outward like a second sun. Her horse reared. Heat seared her face, but she forced herself forward. She would not fall here. "Archers!" she shouted. "Take down the slingers!" River Tribe archers raised their bows, releasing volleys of arrows that streaked across the sky. Fiery jars fell prematurely, exploding harmlessly over empty ground. But Magnus had expected this. A new sound rose, a booming horn from the enemy's side. And then the earth shook. A giant stepped onto the field, a mountain of muscle and armor.
Magnus's champion, known only as the Ironbreaker. He carried a hammer the size of a tree trunk, and every step he took left cracks in the soil. Soldiers scattered in terror. Elowen froze for a heartbeat. Duncan grabbed her arm. "You can't fight him. Not now." Elowen's jaw tightened. "If he reaches the front line, we're finished." The Ironbreaker roared, charging through soldiers, sending bodies flying with every swing. Everything slowed down. Elowen's breath, her heartbeat, the world. She urged her horse forward, straight toward the monster. "Elowen, stop!" Duncan screamed. She didn't. When the Ironbreaker swung his hammer down, Elowen leaned low, the weapon smashing into the earth just behind her, exploding dirt into the air. She leapt from the saddle as the horse veered away. She landed, rolled, and came up just in time to block the next strike. The force sent her skidding backward, boots tearing trenches into the soil. He was too strong, but she was faster. She ducked under a sweeping blow, slicing across his arm. Armor split, blood spurted. He roared and swung again. She jumped aside, the hammer slamming into the corpse of an enemy soldier and pulverizing it instantly. She darted in, striking his knee. He stumbled. One more chance. As he lifted the hammer for a final crushing blow, Elowen sprinted toward him, leapt onto a fallen shield, used it as a springboard, and soared upward, driving her sword straight into the gap beneath his throat guard.
The Ironbreaker staggered, choked, fell like a collapsing tower. The battlefield froze. Then a roar went up, a roar of triumph. Elowen wrenched her sword free, panting. Duncan reached her, eyes wide. "By the gods, Elowen, that was—" "No time," she said, pointing ahead. "Magnus isn't done." The Black Standard. On the far ridge, a tall figure on a black warhorse watched the battle unfold. Clad in dark steel, carved with runes, a blood-red cape billowing behind him, Magnus the Conqueror raised his hand. His soldiers parted like water, and for the first time, Elowen saw him clearly. The man who had burned her homeland, the man who had hunted her since childhood, the man who believed her blood should be his throne. Magnus lowered his hand and began riding forward, slowly, deliberately, like death itself choosing its next victim. Duncan stepped closer to Elowen. "Stay behind the lines. Let Aldrich command the center. Do not confront him. Not yet." Elowen shook her head. "I must." Duncan grabbed her shoulder. "Elowen, listen to me. If you die, everything ends. Your lineage, the alliance, the kingdom, all of it." The battlefield noise faded around her. The world narrowed to a single truth. "I am done running," she said quietly. She stepped forward. At that moment, the sky darkened further as storm clouds rolled in. Thunder cracked across the valley. Magnus's voice boomed, amplified by arcane power. "Elowen of the North, face me, or watch your people die." Elowen felt the weight of thousands of eyes on her. She raised her sword. "I'm coming." Duncan closed his eyes. "Then may the gods stand with you." The two destinies collide. Elowen walked through the battlefield toward Magnus, each step heavy with fate. Soldiers stopped fighting, weapons lowered. Even the wind halted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Magnus dismounted, towering over her like a living shadow. "So, the lost heir stands before me at last." Elowen's grip tightened. "I'm not lost. You simply failed to break me." Magnus laughed, a deep, cruel sound. You think your blood belongs to you? You think fate chose you? No, child. Fate chose me, and your bloodline is the key to the throne that is rightfully mine." His eyes glowed faintly, dark magic pulsing within them. Elowen steadied herself. "The only thing my blood will unlock is your downfall." Magnus drew his massive sword. The earth trembled. Elowen lifted hers. Her heartbeat slowed. Thunder rolled above. And then they charged. Steel exploded against steel. Sparks flew. The valley shook from the force of their clash. Magnus's strength was overwhelming. Every strike was like a hammer blow. Elowen dodged, parried, slid across the dirt, retaliating with swift, precise cuts. He swung wide. She ducked, slicing along his side. He roared in fury, slamming his blade into the ground. The shockwave sent her tumbling backward. She rolled to her feet, panting. His power was far beyond anything she had faced, but she would not stop. "Is that all?" Magnus sneered. Elowen spat blood. "No, that's just the beginning." She charged again. Their blades met, once, twice. Thunder boomed overhead. Lightning illuminated the battlefield. And the final clash of their swords sent a shockwave that rippled across the valley, knocking warriors from their feet. The fate of kingdoms hung on the edge of that single moment.
The storm above the valley raged as if the heavens themselves were testing the resolve of warriors below. Rain fell in sheets, turning the battlefield into mud-churned chaos of slipping horses, sinking boots, and warriors struggling to maintain footing while clashing swords. Lightning cut across the sky, illuminating Magnus's dark figure as he loomed over the front lines, his cape drenched, armor gleaming wetly, eyes like molten steel. He had faced Elowen twice before, once in whispers of childhood fear, once in the distant forests of the Highlands, and now it was the final reckoning. The last heir of the Northern Dominion had grown beyond his anticipation. Elowen wiped blood and rain from her face, her silver-lined cloak plastered to her back, her sword slick with mud and steel. Every breath burned her lungs, every heartbeat screamed through her chest, but she did not waver. Every movement was precise, each step deliberate. Duncan rode close, shielding her from stray attacks, while the army formed lines behind them, ready for the decisive clash. The war horn of Magnus blasted again, signaling the charge of the blood serpents. Dozens of elite soldiers, clad in black and scarlet armor, swords dripping with ancient venomous lore, rushed forward like a storm wave. They were faster than ordinary men, coordinated with unnatural precision. But Elowen met them with unwavering courage. She leapt from her horse, rolling into the first wave of assailants, blade cutting cleanly through the defense. Sparks flew with each strike. She pivoted, blocked a sword to her shoulder, countered, and drove the enemy back. Time slowed around her. Every strike, every parry, every movement was a dance of instinct and memory, every moment a step closer to destiny. Duncan blocked a killing blow from a blood serpent behind her, gritting his teeth. "Elowen, the center is collapsing. You must—" "I see it," she shouted. "Magnus is weak on his left flank. Draw him." The blood serpents faltered as her words echoed through the battlefield. She sprinted, using mud and debris to her advantage, weaving through soldiers, slashing, ducking, twisting, her heart hammering with anticipation. Lightning struck a nearby tree, splintering it with a deafening crack. She pivoted around the debris, charging directly at Magnus. His gaze met hers, the two titans sizing each other in silence that drowned out the battle around them. "You think a girl can stop me?" Magnus bellowed over the rain. His sword was raised high, energy radiating from it like a living force.
The ground trembled with each step he took. "I don't think," Elowen said, gripping her sword tighter. "I know." She lunged, sidestepped a colossal downward strike, and drove her sword into his armored thigh. Magnus roared in fury, swinging with all his strength, but Elowen rolled to the side, kicking up mud and standing on her feet in perfect balance. Lightning illuminated the blood-streaked battlefield as the two circled each other. From behind, Duncan commanded the archers, "Rain fire! Strike at the flanks!" Arrows rained upon the blood serpents, breaking their ranks and forcing Magnus to shift his focus. Elowen noticed the momentary distraction, enough to exploit. She darted forward, slashing at his exposed side, and the blade bit deep into the armor. Magnus stumbled back, fury twisting his face. "You cannot win!" he roared, swinging the sword in a wild, almost uncontrollable arc. "Your bloodline will fall, like all before you!" Elowen's gaze sharpened. "Then let it fall on me, and let the North rise from my strength." She dodged another devastating swing and countered with precision, landing blow after blow, exploiting every weakness Magnus revealed. The battle seemed eternal, thunder and lightning tearing across the sky, rain turning the valley into a blur of steel, blood, and mud. Every soldier held their breath, the clash of destiny unfolding before them. Suddenly, Magnus stepped back, his armor dented, cloak shredded, breathing heavy. Elowen saw it, the slight falter in his movements, the small hesitation. The black standard, the signal of his might, began to sway in the storm. The tide was turning. Elowen took a deep breath, focusing every ounce of her being. She raised her sword, the silver catching a flash of lightning. Then, with the force of every hardship she had endured, the fires of her village, the betrayals, the endless pursuit, the weight of her mother's legacy, she struck. A single, perfect blow cleaved through Magnus's guard, driving him to his knees. He fell to the mud, sword slipping from his grasp, chest heaving. The blood serpents faltered. The army around him froze, disbelief spreading through their ranks. Elowen stood over him, sword pointed to his chest, rain running down her face, cloak whipping like a banner of triumph. "This ends now," she shouted, her voice cutting through the storm. "No more blood, no more fear. Your reign ends here." For the first time, Magnus looked afraid. His shoulders slumped slightly. His eyes, once molten steel, now reflected the stormy sky above, and a glimmer of respect flickered, barely visible but undeniable. King Aldrich rode forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've done it. The North will live because of you." Duncan came close, nodding, face streaked with mud and sweat. "You fought like a true queen today, Elowen, not just for yourself, but for everyone." Elowen's chest heaved as the reality settled in. Around the battlefield, Magnus's forces began to surrender. The blood serpents, leaderless and broken, dropped their weapons. Survivors fled into the forest. The rain softened, almost as if the storm itself was acknowledging the end of terror. Elowen looked around the battlefield. Thousands of warriors, Highlanders, river tribes, eastern mercenaries, Caerlion knights cheered in unison. Her heart swelled with emotion, tears mixing with rain. She had survived, she had led, and she had won. Magnus, kneeling before her, spoke hoarsely. "You are more than I expected. The North will remember you." Elowen lowered her sword, but did not strike him again. "And let this be the end of all tyrants who believe blood alone grants power. Rise, Magnus, if you dare, but know that the North will never bow to fear again." He struggled to his feet, glaring one last time before being taken into custody by the Allied forces. Chains were placed upon him, and the final symbol of terror that had haunted the lands for years was ended. Aftermath and unity. The valley was quiet now, save for the groans of the wounded and the murmur of survivors. Fires were extinguished, the dead were tended to, and survivors embraced one another. Elowen walked through the aftermath, feeling the mud beneath her boots, the rain still dripping from her hair, the weight of the day settling on her shoulders. Every soldier who passed her bowed, cheered, or saluted. She had become a legend in their eyes. King Aldric approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The kingdoms will honor this day. Your courage has united lands that were once divided. The North will rise again because of you." Elowen swallowed, fighting back tears. "I did what had to be done. My mother, she would have been proud." Duncan stood nearby, nodding. "And so are we all." As the sun broke through the storm clouds, casting light across the valley, banners of all the allied kingdoms fluttered together. It was a symbol not of conquest, but of unity, courage, and the triumph of hope over darkness. Elowen mounted her horse once more, looking toward the horizon. The journey ahead was not over. Rebuilding would take years, alliances had to be strengthened, and the threat of Magnus's remnants lingered. But for the first time, she felt the power of her own destiny, the legacy of her bloodline, and the unwavering strength that had carried her through fires, chains, and betrayal. Her sword glinted in the sunlight, her cloak shimmered like silver waves in the wind, and she knew that she had become more than just the last heir of the Northern Dominion. She had become the Iron Rose of the Highlands, a legend that would endure long after the battle was won.
In a land of fire and shadow, where kingdoms rise and fall with the stroke of a sword, one girl holds the fate of an entire realm in her hands. Born the last heir of a stolen throne, hunted by a ruthless conqueror, she must rally armies, face deadly foes, and defy destiny itself. This is the story of Elowen, the Iron Rose of the Highlands, a young hero whose courage will echo through the ages. Brace yourself for a journey of war, honor, and the relentless fight for freedom.